So I'm going to invite you into one of my worship songs this morning. That's what this is doing up here, although this is going to be a part of our next several weeks together. And I'm going to tell you about the song, and we're just going to sing a little bit of it, but you need to know that I don't feel very confident doing this at all. I can play a bass up there in the praise team, but this is different. This is a private thing. But before I do, I just wanted to let you know, if you're not a church person, either here or online, you might not know what a narthex is. If you heard that word, it's the lobby. It's another name for lobby. I researched it once, but I'm old enough that I've forgotten all that research. So some of you may recognize this song. It actually came out in 1995, but I didn't hear it until the Wow Worship double disc thing came out in 1999. It had a blue side and it had a yellow side. This is number 25 on the Wow Worship. And actually, it's a song that every time I'm listening to Smile and they say, this is a throwback, I'm thinking, are they going to play that one? It's simple. It's a call to something specific. And when it came out, my family hated this about me, my boys especially. When I found a song that ministered to me, I looped it over and over. And this is one of the ones. How many of you know this song? Take My Life. Okay. I guess I got to turn things on. I got a little lamp here so you can hear it. Oh, I didn't plug in, did I? Oh, yeah, I did plug in. There we go. I had my tuner on. When you put the tuner on, you can't hear it. So we're just going to sing a little bit of this. So sing real loud to drown me out, okay? Holiness, holiness, what I long for. Holiness is what I need. Holiness, holiness, what you want from me. Faithfulness, faithfulness is what I long for. Faithfulness is what I need. Faithfulness, faithfulness is what you want from me. The chorus, take my heart, take my heart and form it. Take my mind and form it. Take my will and conform it to yours, oh Lord. To yours, oh Lord. Thank you for joining me in that. That's still no. There's another verse about righteousness, but I just wanted to have you have a taste of it and actually see how it comes out, because the next series we're going to be in is this is going to be the illustration. It's going to be out every Sunday and somewhere around here in the front. But I want to talk about the parts of a guitar, not every part, but some parts, because some of these parts make a difference in where we're going with this series. So let's see if I'm going to do them in the right order here. First of all, we have strings. So you see all the strings there. There's 6 of them on this. Tim's bass has 5 strings, and a normal bass has 4. He has several of those too, because you can never have too many basses. But so each guitar has a string, and so when you pluck that, I didn't use a pick because I was afraid I'd flip it into the sound hole. I know, Dan, you've probably done that 1,000 times, and it's hard to get them out. And so I just did it with my thumb. And so you have a string, and you have a bridge, and that's this part that hooks onto the bottom. I'm sorry, you guys, I'm not letting you see it. You have a bridge here, but I'm concentrating on these bridge pins. Because there's a loop at the end of the string, and you put it down through that hole, and you put the pin down, and that holds it firm in place. And then up at the other hand, there's some other parts in here I'm not going to talk about, but you have your peg up here. I better turn my volume down. Chris is going to have a fit because I'm doing the... you have string posts. And so the other end of that string gets wound around, and then you tighten it and loosen it, and that changes things. And then you have a tuner. Now, this is my tuner. I love this tuner. And you turn it on, and you can't hear it, and I pluck it, and it's green or it's red, and it shows me which direction so I can tune. I love that. It's the first time I ever had an onboard tuner in one of my instruments. I usually have a foot tuner. I have one that I put on the top of one of my amps for my basses or whatever else I'm playing. And then you have these tuning pegs. And that turns the string posts, and that changes how it sounds up here. This is a fretboard, but you don't need to know that, and this is the sound hole. Anyway, so those are the basic parts of a guitar. And they all have to work together because you need to have a certain sound come out of it. As you could tell, when I was hitting them fairly right, you get a pleasant sound, but if you hit them wrong, and in between these frets, which are the bars, is where you have to press to get that pure note. And to achieve music and harmony, you need to have a tension in this string. Or if you don't have tension, you don't have a note. You need tension. I'm not going to tune it. And there's a relationship with these strings to one another which makes the harmonies. And it can be the sound of melancholy. That's an E minor. Or it can be happy, E major. The relationship of the strings to one another. And what I'm doing as we start this new series, and it's called Necessary Tensions, is talking about some issues that we struggle with and how we can resolve them. So I want you to keep that thing in your mind, and I'm going to talk about the relationship of those things to the Christian walk. So this is where the handout comes in if you have a handout. We're going to go walk back through the parts of the guitar and hopefully make an analogy to our spiritual walk. So when we get to the difficult things, and so in all honesty, I've been planning on this for several years. The playing in front of you has always been what stopped me. But the series through Colossians, we ran into two of those where I said to you, there's a tension, and I'm going to talk about it someday. Well, now is the time we're going to talk about some of those tensions. So we're going to apply those parts of the guitar to Christian life. So if you have a handout, number one are the strings. Strings represent a lot of things, but the basic thing is that the strings represent you as a Christ follower. Now, if you're outside of Jesus in that relationship, that's something you have to work into. You don't have an instrument. But it's easy to gain, simple to gain, let's put it that way. It also can represent different aspects of the believer's life. But the verse that goes along with that is John 1:12. But to all who believed in him and accepted him, he gave the right to become children of God. And in a sense, you become these strings with a purpose to make music in your own life and with others in your life, with your wife and your kids, with your coworkers, with certainly a one kind of music with the body and a different tune that you play with the neighbors who don't know Jesus yet, but it's still getting along. It could also represent different areas of your life. In this guitar, there's 6 strings. It could be your work life. It could be your marriage. It could be your relationships with your kids. It could be all the different parts of your life that represent human living in this world, and those are the strings. Now, the bridge pins, which are really important, are the kingdom truths and principles and practices that we learn. Psalm 24, 1 and 2 puts it this way: the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. The world and all its people belong to him, for he laid the earth's foundation in the seas and built it on the ocean depths. God made everything. Everything comes out of who He is. So everything operates the way He operates, except that we have latitude to do something different. So let's put it this way. Every right thing, every beneficial thing, every truly lasting thing comes out of the character of God. And just like those bridge pins, it doesn't work on an electric instrument because the bridge is adjustable on an electric, and you can adjust the strings at this end, but on an acoustic guitar, these pins are not moving. They're not adjustable. They're anchored firmly. So this represents that all things come from God. There's no other place to go to get the music from. There's no other place to go where the harmonies will come out. There's no other place. It's found. It is the foundation. He is our foundation, and that's whether we know what those foundations are, what God says about this or His character. Of course, we're learning that stuff all the time. That's why we keep coming together. That's why we keep studying His Word. That's why we keep sharing our lives with one another and praying. So we have strings that are Jesus followers or could represent different facets of the Jesus follower life, or it could also does represent our harmony together as a body as well. That all applies. Then we have the bridge pins that hold those strings firmly in place at one end. That is, there's a standard, there's a way, and it's the best way, it's the right way. It's the designer of the instrument's way, and guess who designed the instrument? We know God did. And we have the string posts. That's the other end of that string in your life, and it's wound around that post at the top. That represents, for our purposes, our earthly limitations, our lack of foresight, the things we only see now and don't see later. From this, I selected from the book of 1 Corinthians, a couple of verses put together. Now our knowledge is partial and incomplete. Now we see things imperfectly, like puzzling reflections in a mirror. But then we will see everything with perfect clarity. All that I know is partial and incomplete, but then I will know everything completely, just as God knows me completely. So here we have the fact that I get hungry, my clothes wear out, I'm fired or laid off, I get sick, there's some loss I endure, there's misunderstanding in my world. However else you want to term all those things, things are... There are two things represented: the firmness of God's sovereign, complete, unmoving, unchanging, for forever will or character as it comes out from Him to us. And then the other side we have our lives wrapped around the things. And this isn't bad things. These are necessary things. We need to eat. We need to have clothes on our back. You need a car to drive. In our culture, most of us need a car to go somewhere or some other form of transportation. They're all things we have to give consideration to. And there's a way that we give consideration. Our relationships fall into that category of our lives are wrapped around those things. There are important things that make the string, aid the string in singing, in making melody and making a tune. A pleasant one, a productive one. And then number 4, we have the tuner. The tuner is God revealed in the Word. So you notice number 2 says kingdom truths, principles, and practices. And I separated that from the Word because whether you have a copy of the Bible or not, the things that are true of this world as God created it are still true. If you don't have that resource, they're still true. If you haven't heard or if you don't look into, they're still true. Truth doesn't change, like those bridge pins don't change. They're in there. They hold that string in there, and we are held in God's hands in that way, really whether we're in relationship or not. But it is God who is revealed in His Word that is the tuner. So we talked about a few weeks ago, maybe more than a few, tuning to concert pitch. You may remember Tim Welker painted a beautiful painting that hangs in my office now about that, keeping in tune with God. And how we get to that place to tune each of those strings comes from the tuner setting the tone. I have one of my tuners. I don't trust my ears anymore so I don't use this one. But when you press the button for the E string, it gives out an E tune, and then you adjust until it sounds the same. Well, I don't trust that it'll sound the same. So I use an electronic one with a needle that points or that light that lights up. But there is the standard that you tune the string to get the pitch that it was intended to cover. And so we have a couple of places that remind us of that. John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That Word is Jesus. And that is that plain statement that we need to remember that God didn't come along at some point in history and decide he was going to have influence with us. He was before history. He made history. He created it and us, and we are all subject by nature, and this is really hard to say it, not by human nature, but because of who he is, because he created it, we are subject to his nature. It's just the way it is. And so it was in the beginning. And then John 17, I have given them your word. Jesus is speaking here. In verse 15, I'm not asking you to take them out of the world, but to keep them safe from the evil one. They do not belong to this world any more than I do. Make them holy by your truth. Teach them your word, which is truth. So truth and word and tuner, where you adjust the strings to get to the right pitch. This is where it comes from. This is the standard. It is God revealed in the Word. I put it that way too because sometimes the physical book has been worshipped. Like the paper it's printed on and the words that are on it. And you have seen, I remember the days when you didn't dare write in a Bible because some dear old saint would tell you how precious that paper and cardboard and ink collected works were. You better not deface it. But we understand now it's not that it's printed, it's that it reveals who God is that makes this special. And so we can write in our Bibles, and we can, we're not going to worship this book. We're worshiping the contents or the God the contents points to. And so that is our tuner, and here's where the paradox or where the tension is introduced. Paradox is another word to use. Things that seem to be opposite, but really they're not. Here's where tensions are introduced. So you have a tone you have to sit. And by the way, there are different tunings. There's a standard tuning of a guitar, and then there's different ways you can tune it so you get a different sound out of it. But as I said, when I released the tension on the E string there, it was just a flubby sound. But when I turn the tuner telling me where the E, and it's red on one side or the other if it's sharp or flat, and then it's green in the center, and I turn that until it achieves what the tuner is telling me. And so I have these things up here, and I have food I need to eat, but it can be food that I'm eating for my benefit, or it could be food that I glutton myself on, indulge myself on, and make myself unhealthy. So then we start having, there's an idea of what that's supposed to be down there, and we have our temporary human life here, and we're struggling with what all this means with relationships and our work and all of those elements of our life. And so it introduces some tensions. For an example, so this is not up on the screen, it's not in your handout, but this is one example I'm going to give you. So in Matthew 18:15, Jesus says, if your brother sins against you, go and show him his fault just between the two of you. If he listens to you, you have won your brother over. So you have a relationship with someone in your life, and they have sinned against you, and the Bible says, Jesus said, these are Jesus' own words, that I need to go to that person and not in a bold, over the top, in your face way, honestly, in love, go to that brother and say, you've sinned against me, and let's talk about that. And this passage goes on in case it doesn't work. And so we have this concept in our life that wrongs done to us, we should pursue their righting, the righting of those wrongs, right? We see that? In Proverbs 19:11, it says, sensible people control their temper. They earn respect by overlooking wrongs. And 1 Peter 4:8 in the New Testament says, above all, love each other deeply because love covers over a multitude of sins. So which is it? Do I get to pursue every time I'm offended? Do I need to have that made right? Or should I let it go? That's attention. There's an answer down there, and there's a way that it applies to our life right here. And the Word shows us how to become sensitive to all the issues that are involved in that. That's what this series is going to be about. We're going to look at some tensions that are common, and also some tensions that may not be common to me, but you feel are common. So actually I have two ways to do that. One of them I'm going to show you this. I'm going to take these back in the back when I'm done, because I know you won't come up to get them. If you want to write down a tension and leave it, there's a couple other ways at the end that I'll tell you that you can submit those things. Now I don't know how long this series is going to go. I have some primary ones, and they're probably more theological than somebody who's not in ministry all the time would think. But there are lots of these kinds of tensions, and the problem is it makes us feel like we have to choose one or the other instead of find that there's a note, there's a pitch, and how they relate to one another makes music and harmony in our lives, and that's what God intended. I don't have the answer for you right now. Here's the form that it's going to come in. It's going to come in understanding, a shift in our understanding, a shift in our perspective, and a shift in our behavior. That's going to be a part of what we do. Here's another one that I thought of. We tell people, and there's truth in this, it's not really stated exactly in a verse, but come to Jesus just as you are. He accepts you just as you are, and that's true. But the Bible, and this is one of the ones we talked about in Colossians, talks about how someone who is following Jesus behaves. So do I get to be who I am? Or am I supposed to be different? There's a tension in there. And we need to figure out what is right and when it's right, because that's also a truth in all this, is that there's not one answer that fits every situation. We need to look into the character of God, and we need to look at our circumstances and our context. And then we need to be sensitive about what other people are doing. So this is where the tuning pegs, number 5, that's the last one in your handout. That's where the tuning pegs come in. This is our alignment. So Romans 12:2, don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good, pleasing, and perfect. That's what we want. We want His good, pleasing, and perfect will. And it talks about, this is the issue of who you're tuning to. And here's the place where you tune. The rest is kind of already. The principles are there. God has, before He created, those principles were true. And then when he created, creation took on who He was. And they're firmly pegged down here on those pegs there in the bridge pins. And then we have our life. When we're born, we have this life. And so we have this string stretching. We have God reaching out toward us through His Word with principles. We have the reality of how we live those principles out in our world. And sometimes we come to places where it just doesn't seem to make any sense. Now I don't even know if I'm going to use the ones I already have. I have 8, but I'm not convinced about some of them already. I want your participation. That's what I really would like. Because what we often do is take our cue of where we're going to turn this peg and how much tension we're going to put on that, to what note it's going to be played. We take it from places other than the God revealed in the world. And then we get off base. We get upset. And this is where all this comes together, tension. Now, here is a truth we have to settle on. We're not supposed to look at each tension and say, how can I relieve the tension? That's the American way. By the way, that's the human condition, but in America we're really good at it. How do I get over my cold food? I put it in the microwave, hit a button, and it's the temperature I want it. We demand quick answers. We want to get out of trouble. But just if I detuned every string in that guitar and played it for you, it would be nothing. Even with my little tiny PV amp up here, you wouldn't be able to hear a thing. There's no music. And it's the same in God's Word. There are tensions that must be in place because we're still here, and the fullness of those truths down here won't be realized. That offense against a brother, well, when I get to glory, to heaven, to eternity, there's not going to be any offense. There's not going to be a way for tension to even exist. But here we know we're all imperfect and it's going to happen. So there's a tension in here, and there's a way where you play a beautiful melody that represents the Word of God, but represents the needs of your fellow and yourself, human being. And in that middle, we get the tune. Music is really important to the human spirit. God made music for that purpose. And so we can use this as an analogy, and this is our analogy throughout the length of this series. Now, this series is going to start October 1st, because next Sunday I'll be at the men's retreat, and Doug Jensen will be here bringing a message. And I'm excited about that. Make sure that you're here for that. I'm glad that I get to listen after I've not been here, and I can go back and watch and listen. I believe we've resolved our streaming issues, but I'm not looking at them to tell me whether it's true or not. But what I'm asking you to do is consider what the tensions you experience in your life and the questions you have. So you'll see up there, you'll find my email address. Go ahead, Brendan, put that up. And my phone number for you to text. So think about this and pray about this. Where is it where I run into that? Well, I see this in your Word, but I also see this in your Word. I mean, where am I supposed to be? I'm really confused. Because God does not want us to be confused, but we do have to wrestle with the truth that tension exists for a reason. Not everything is tension. So many things are so plain and clear. Not that we always choose them, but they're plain and clear. But there are those areas. Maybe these are the ones where you think it's gray. You might use that term, gray area. What is it? How do we make those two seemingly opposing ideas come together and be a good way to live for us? Because you know what happens? Peace happens. Peace happens when we find we can live in the intended tension, the necessary tension that this world gives us as we walk through, called to live a kingdom life in a world that is not kingdom focused. And there are good things that come out of it. So that we'll be looking at results of when we do that right. And again, we're operating under this threefold tuning, changing of the tuning pegs. I need the correct understanding and adjust to it when I discover it. I need a corrected perspective, so I need to see it as God intended, not as I have interpreted it. And then when those things come into focus, I need to make the tuning adjustment. Interesting about this, anything can set off the tuning of this guitar. The temperature, the humidity, the age of the strings. They make jokes about how long bass players keep their strings on. I saw an old bass with rust on them. But it makes a difference. I have an old guitar at home that have had the same strings on it for probably 20 years. You can barely press down those things. They hurt like mad. Life does the same thing to us. So that's why it makes us not only principle-driven, that we'll figure out how to look at these kinds of things so that when our lives change and we get out of tune, we can still strive to be in tune. So we don't just get in tune and stay in tune. So will you share with me? Will you email me something? And by the way, if you text, please tell me who you are. I hate those like anonymous texts, and I'm looking through the directory. I'm Googling you, and you can't hardly find a good phone number on Google. And I want to hear from you because we need to address the needs that you're feeling, or I feel like we're not doing one another any good, and that's what we need to do. God has something for us in these tensions. So this is the start. I'll take the cards up back after I pray, and the praise team comes up to sing the doxology. Online, a text over the course of, you don't have to do it today, But if you're going to do it, put a note in your calendar or on your notepad or write it down. If you still do those kinds of things, I still do some of that too. And ask God, what is it? Identify the tensions. You probably don't have to ask. You may be thinking right now, yeah, I don't get that. I don't understand that. There's this, and then there's this. Where am I supposed to get my guidance? What am I supposed to do? We're going to try to cover that. So pray for me as I dig into this. This has been on my mind for a long, long time. I pray God give us exactly what we need to be able to do this. So let's stand and pray in closing. Band will come up. We'll sing the doxology. Lord, thank you for a range of permissions to investigate who you are, your word, truth, our place in this world, not only how we function and survive and prosper, but how we can be tuned to share with other people, to be people of hospitality. We need your help. It's hard being a human. Thank you, Lord, that you came and understand all the different things that come at us. And we praise you that you were perfect at it. You didn't go to excess like sometimes we go to excess. You didn't fall short of what the Father intended in your life like we often fall short. And you willingly came to walk this. And when you died on the cross, and when you were resurrected, and as you call us each to say, I will follow you, Jesus, it's not a nebulous, undefined thing. Sometimes it feels like it. But you have given us aid in your word to understand these places where we go, Lord, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to reach out to this person. Your word seems to say this here. It seems to say this somewhere else, and here I am, trying to discover what your will is. I pray you would give us the revelation of how to meet those things, how to put some of them to bed, get full understanding, not be trapped in them any longer, but I also pray you'd help us to develop the means to apply this as things change in our lives, relationships, jobs, all sorts of things, so that we can continue to play the music, the heavenly music that you intended. Each life when we are striving to live for you, plays a tune that is attractive and beneficial in a world of chaos and cacophony and negative things. So lead us. We need your leadership. I need it. I pray you'll be with me in the working out of this, and you'll be with all of us in sharing. Yeah, I've always wondered about this. I've always had a question about this. And to help us to be guided to the ones that you want us to talk about and deal with for your glory. And so we ask it all in Jesus' name.